India Reads. Today we are on book 8 of Marcus Aurelius' Meditation. Let's hit the page. Another encouragement to humility. You can't claim to have lived your life as a philosopher, not even your whole adulthood. You can see for yourself how far you're from philosophy, and so can many others. You're tainted. It's not so easy now to have a reputation as a philosopher, and your position is an obstacle as well. So you know how things stand. Now forget what they think of you. Be satisfied if you can live the rest of your life, however short as your nature demands. Focus on that and don't let anything distract you. You wandered all over and finally realized that you never found what you were after. How to live, not in syllogisms, but not in money or fame or self-indulgence, nowhere. Then where is to be found? In doing what human nature requires. How? Through first principles, which should govern your intentions and your actions. What principles? Those to do with good and evil. That nothing is good except what leads to fairness and self-control and courage and free will. And nothing is bad except what does the opposite. For every action, ask how does it affect me? Could I change my mind about it? But soon I'll be dead and the slate's empty. So this is the only question. Is is it the action of a responsible being, part of society, and subject of the same decrees as God? Alexander and Caesar and Pompey compared with Diagnosis, Diogenes, Heraclitus, Socrates. The philosophers knew the what, the why, and the how. Their minds were their own. The others, nothing but anxiety and enslavement. You can hold your breath until you turn blue, but they're still going on doing it. The first step, don't be anxious. Nature controls it all. And before long you'll be no one, nowhere, like Hadrian and Augustus. Second step, concentrate on what you have to do. Fix your eyes on it. Remind yourself that your task is to be a good human being. Remind yourself what nature demands of people. Then do it without hesitation and speak the truth as you see it, but with kindness, with humility, without hypocrisy. Nature's job to shift things elsewhere, to transform them, to pick them up and move them from here and there. Constant alteration. But not to worry, there's nothing new here. Everything is familiar, even the proportions are unchanged. Nature of any kind thrives on progress forward, and progress for a rational mind means not accepting falsehoods or uncertainty in its perceptions, making unselfish actions its only aim, seeking and shunning only the things it has control over, embracing what nature demands of it, the nature in which it participates, as the leaves nature does in the trees, except that the nature shared by the leaf is without consciousness or reason and subject to impediments, whereas that shared by the human being is without impediments and rational and just, since it allots to each and everything an equal and proportionate share of time, being purpose, action, chance. Examine it closely, not whether they're identical point by point, but in the aggregate, this weighed against that. No time for reading, for controlling your arrogance, yes. For overcoming pain and pleasure, yes. For outgrowing ambition, yes. For not feeling anger at stupid and unpleasant people, even for caring about them, and for that, yes. Don't be overheard complaining about life at court, not even to yourself. Remorse is annoyance at yourself for having passed up for something that's to your benefit. But if it's to your benefit, it must be good, something a truly good person would be concerned for. But no truly good person would feel remorse at passing up pleasure, so it cannot be to your benefit or good. What is it fundamentally? What is it? What is its nature and substance and its reason for being? What is it doing in the world? How long is it there for? When you have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, remember that your defining characteristics, what defines a human being, is to work with others. Even animals know how to sleep, but it's a characteristic activity that the more natural one, the more innate one, and the more satisfying. Apply them constantly to everything that happens: physics, ethics, logic. When you have to deal with somebody, ask yourself, what does he mean by good and bad? If he thinks X or Y about pleasure and pain, and what produces them, about fame and disgrace, about life and death, then it shouldn't shock or surprise you when he does X or Y. In fact, I'll remind myself that he has no real choice. Remember, you shouldn't be surprised that a fig tree produces figs, or that the world, or not the world that it produces. A good doctor isn't surprised when his patient has fevers, or a helpsman when the wind blows against him. Remember that to change your mind and to accept correction are free acts too. The action is yours based on your own will, your own decision, and your own mind. If it's in your control, then why do you do it? If it's in someone else, then who are you blaming? Atoms, the gods, stupid either way. Blame no one, set people straight if you can. If not, just repair the damage. And suppose you can't do that either, then where does blaming people get you? No pointless action. Blame no one, set people straight if you can. If not, just repair the damage. And suppose you can't do either, then where does blaming people get you? No pointless action. What dies doesn't vanish, it stays here in the world, transformed, dissolved as parts of the world and of you, which are transformed, return without grumbling. Everything is here for a purpose, from horse to wine, wine shoots. What's surprising about them? Even the sun will tell you, I have a purpose, and the other gods as well. Then why were you born? For pleasure? See if that answer will stand. See if that answer will stand up for question. Nature is like someone throwing a ball in the air, gauging its rise and arc. And where will it fall? What does the ball gain as it flies upwards, or lose when it plummets to earth? What dies does not vanish, it stays here in the world, transformed, dissolved as the parts of the world, and you and of you, which are transformed in turn without grumbling. Everything is here for a purpose, from horses to wine shoots. What's surprising about them? Even the sun will tell you, I have a purpose in the other gods as well. And why were you born? For pleasure? See if that answer will stand up for questioning. Nature is like someone throwing a ball in the air, gauging its rise and arc. And where does it fall? And what does the ball gain as it flies upwards, or lose when it plummets to the earth? What does the bubble gain from its existence, or lose by bursting? Same for a candle. Turn it inside out. What is it like? What is it like, old or sick or selling itself on the streets? They all die soon. Praiser and praised, rememberer and remembered, remembered in these parts or in a corner of them. Even there, they all don't agree with each other or even with themselves. And the whole earth, a mere point in space. Stick to what is in front of you. Idea, action, utterance. This is what you deserve. You could be good today, but instead you choose tomorrow. What I do, I attribute it to human beneficence. What what is done to me, I accept it and attribute it to the gods, and that source from which all things together flow. Like the baths, oil, sweat, dirt, greyish water, all of it disgusting. The whole of life, all of the visible world. Verus leaving Lucia, and then behind Lucia, Maximus leaving Secunda, and Secunda, Diotimus leaving Epic, Epitiacanus, and Epitiacanus Faustia leaving Antonius, and then Antonius. So, with all of them, Hadrian leaving Celer and Celer, where have they all gone? The brilliant and the insightful ones, the proud, brilliant as Charax and Demetrius, the Platonist and the Eudemian, and the rest of them short lived creatures long dead. Some of them not remembered at all, some become legends, some even lost to legend. So remember, your components will be scattered too, the life within you quenched, or marching orders and another posting. Joy for humans lie in human actions, kindness to others, contempt for the senses, interrogation of appearances, observation of nature and of events in nature. Three relationships, the body that you inhabit, with the divine, the cause of everything in all things, and with the people around you. Either pain affects the body, which is the body's problem, or is it affects the soul. But the soul can choose not to be affected, preserving its own serenity, its own tranquility. All our decisions, urges, desires, aversions lies within. No evil can touch them. To erase false perceptions, tell yourself, I have it in me to keep my soul from evil, lust, and confusion. To see things as they are, treat them as they deserve. Don't overlook this innate ability to speak for this to the Senate or anyone in the right tone without being overbearing, to choose the right words. Augustus quote his wife, his daughter, his grandsons, his stepsons, his sister Agrippa, The relatives, servants, friends, Arius, Mecaenas, the doctors, the sacrificial priests, the whole court dead. And consider the others, not just the deaths of the individuals like the family of the Pompeys. That line they write on tombs, last surviving descendant. Consider the ancestors' anxiety that there be a successor, but someone has to be the last. There too, the death of a whole house. You have to assemble your life yourself, action by action, and be satisfied if each one achieves its goal as far as it can. No one can keep that from happening, but there are external obstacles. Not to behaving with justice, self-control, and good sense. Well, but perhaps to some concrete action. But if you accept the obstacle and work with what you are given, an alternative will present itself. Another piece of what you are trying to assemble, action by action, to assemble it without arrogance, to let it go with indifference. Have you ever seen a severed hand or a foot, a decapitated head just lying somewhere far away from the body it belongs? That's what we do to ourselves, or we try to when we rebel against what happens to us, when we segregate ourselves, or when we're trying to do something selfish. You have torn yourself away from unity, your natural state, the one you were born to share it, and now you cut yourself from it. And you have one advantage here, that you can reattach yourself, a privilege God has granted you to no other part of no other whole, to be separated, cut away, and reunited. But look how he singled us out. He's allowed us not to be broken off in the first place. And when we are, he's allowed us to return, to graft ourselves back on, and to take up our old position once again, part of a whole. We have serious abilities present in all rational creatures, as in the nature of rationality itself. And there is one of them, and this is one of them. Just as nature takes every obstacle, every impediment, and works around it, turns it to its purposes, incorporates it into itself, so too a rational being can turn each setback into raw material and use it to achieve its goal. Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand and ask, why is it so unbearable? Why can't I endure? You will be embarrassed to answer. Then remind yourself that past and future have no power over you, only the present. And even that can be minimized. Just mark off its limits. And if your mind tries to calm that it can't hold R against that, then heap shame upon it. Are Panthea and or Parmagos still keeping watch on the tomb of Verus, Chabrius, or Diotimus at the tomb of Hadrian? Of course they are not. They aren't. Why would the emperors know if they were? And even if they knew, would it please them? And even if it did, would the mourners live forever? Were they too not fated to grow old and then die? And when that happened, what would the emperors do? The stench of decay, the rotting meat in a bag. Look at it clearly if you can. To the best of my judgment, when I look at human character, I see no virtue placed there to counter justice, but I see one to counter pleasure, self control. Stop perceiving the pain you imagine, and you'll remain completely unaffected. Your logos. But I'm not just logos, fine. Then don't let the logos be injured. If anything else is, then let it decide for itself. For animate beings, harmful is whatever obstructs the operation or the fulfillment of what they intend. Similar obstructions constitute harm to plants, so do for rational creatures. Anything that obstructs the operation of mind is harmful. Apply this to yourself. Do pain and pleasure have their hooks on in you? Let the senses deal with it. Are there obstacles to your action? If you fail to reckon with the possibility, then would harm then that would harm you as a rational being. But if you use common sense, you haven't been harmed or obstructed. No one can obstruct the operations of the mind. No one can get at them. Not fire, not or steel, not tyrants, not abuse, nothing. As long as it's a sphere, in perfect stillness. I have no right to do myself injury. Have I ever injured anyone else if I could avoid it? People find pleasure in different ways. I find it in keeping my mind clear, in not turning away from people or the things that happen to me, in accepting and welcoming everything I see, in treating each thing as it deserves. Give yourself a gift, the present moment. People out for posthumous fame forget that generations to come will be the same, annoying people they know now just as mortal. What does it matter to you if they say X about you or think Y? Lift me up and hurl me wherever you will. My spirit will be gracious to me there, gracious and satisfied, as long as its existence and actions match its nature. Is there any reason why my soul should suffer and be degraded, miserable, tense, huddled, frightened? How could there be? What humans experience is part of human experience. The experience of the ox is part of the experience of oxen, as of the vines is of the vine, and the stones is what is proper to stones. Nothing that can happen is unusual, unnatural, and there is no sense in complaining. Nature does not make us endure the unendurable. External things are not the problem, it's your assessment of them, which you can erase right now. If the problem is something in your own character, who's stopping you from setting your mind straight? And if it's not what you're doing, something, and if it's not that you are not doing something you think you should be, why not just do it? But there are insuperable obstacles, then it's not a problem. The cause of your inaction lies outside you. But how can I go on living with that undone? Then depart with a good conscience, as if you've done it, embracing the obstacles too. Remember that when it withdraws into itself and finds contentment there, the mind is invulnerable. It does nothing against its will. Even its resistance is irrational. But if its judgment is deliberate and grounded in logic, the mind without passion is a fortress. No place is more secure. Once we take refuge where we are safe, there we are safe forever. Not to see this ignorance, to see it and not seek safety means misery. Nothing but what you get from first impressions, that somebody has insulted you, for instance. That, but that's but not that it's done you any harm. The fact that my son is sick that I can see, but that he might die, no, stick with the first impression. Don't extrapolate and nothing had happened to you, or extrapolate from a knowledge of all that can happen in the world. The cucumber is bitter, then throw it out. There are brambles in the path, don't go around them, then go around them. That's all you need to know, nothing more. Don't demand to know why such things exist. Anyone who understands the world will laugh at you, just as a carpenter would if you seem shocked in finding sawdust in his workshop, or a shoemaker at scraps of leather left over from his work. Of course, they have a place to dispose of these. Nature has no door to sweep things out of. But it's a wonderful thing about its workmanship is how, faced with that limitation, it takes everything within it seems broken, old, and useless, and transforms it in itself and makes new things from it, so that it does not need material from any outside source or anywhere to dispose of what is left over. It relies on itself for all it needs: space, material, and labor. No carelessness in your action, no confusion in your words, no imprecision in your thoughts, no retreating into your own soul or trying to escape it, no overactivity. They kill you, cut you with knives, shower you with curses, and that somehow cuts your mind off from the clearness and sanity and self control and justice. A man standing by a spring of clear, sweet water and cursing it, when the fresh water keeps bubbling up, he can shower mud into it or dung, and the stream will carry it away, wash itself clean, remain unstained. To have that, not a cistern but a perpetual spring. How? By working to win your freedom, hour by hour, through patience, honesty, humility. Not to know what the world is to be ignorant of where you are. Not to know what is there to be ignorant of who you are. And that's what it is. Not to know any of this is to be ignorant of why you're here. And what are we to make of anyone who cares about the applause of such people who don't know where or who they are? You want praise from people who kick themselves every 15 minutes, the approval of people who despise themselves. Is it a sign of self respect to regret nearly everything that you do? To join others not just to the air surrounding us through breath, but to the reason that embraces all things through thought. Reason is just as omnipresent, just as widely diffused in those who accept it as air as in those who breathe. The existence of evil does not harm the world, and an un, and an in, and an individual act of evil does not harm the victim. Only one person is harmed by it, and he can stop being harmed as soon as he decides to. Other people's wills are as independent of mine as their breath and bodies. We may exist for the sake of one another, but our rules will have its own domains. Otherwise, the harm that they would otherwise the harm they would cause harm to me. Otherwise, the harm they do would cause harm to me, which is not what God intended for my happiness to rest with someone else. We speak of the sun's light as pouring down on us, as pouring over us in all direction. Yet it's never poured out because it does not really pour. It extends. It beams get its name from their extension. To see the nature of the sunbeam, look at the light it falls through the narrow opening into a dark room. It extends in a straight line, striking any solid object that stands in its way and blocks the space beyond it. There it remains, not vanishing, not failing away. That's and that's what the outpouring, the diffusion of thought should be like. Not emptied out but extended, and not striking at obstacles with fury and violence or failing away before them, but holding its ground and illuminating what it receives. What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness. Fear of death is fear of what we may experience, nothing at all, or something quite new. But if we experience nothing, we can experience nothing bad. And if our experience changes, then our existence will change, but not cease. People exist for one another. You can instruct or endure them. An arrow has one motion and the mind another. Even when pausing, when the weighing conclusion, the mind is moving forward towards its goal, to enter another's minds and let them enter yours. So with that, we've come to the end of book 8. What have we learned? Uh, the first uh, the first and the most important lesson that he has in this chapter is something that I want to read it out for you again. Yes, he talks about three relationships that we have. One, with the body that you inhabit. Two, with nature or divinity or the cause of everything in all things that you see around yourself, and with the people around you. And he kind of dwells on the all three relationships. First, with the body that you inhabit, whatever happens to you is what how nature willed it to. So you can choose to fight against it or go with the flow. He has a very beautiful example of it, which I am not getting right now. Mm, 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 mm. Doesn't matter. Uh, yeah, one of the points which he keeps coming back to is no matter what, you will die. So remember that, accept that without arrogance, and therefore look forward to every moment. Yes, one of the other important lessons is there is no past, there is no future. Live in the present, be present in the moment, and live it the fullest possible. So, this is a good lesson from this book. Yeah, and what else? What else? Uh, endure what nature gives you. Uh, there is no such thing as unendurable. If you feel so, you have the choice of quitting. I think the example that he gives is if the cucumber is bitter, then don't eat the cucumber. But if nature has given you cucumber, then you as well might, eat it. But if you're so affected by it, just throw it away and move on in life. The cucumber is bitter, then throw it out. There you go. Don't lash out against nature, don't lash out against circumstances, don't give excuses for what's happening to you. A man standing by the spring with clear bubbling fresh water can throw mud at it, can throw dung at it, but the spring will clean itself and move on. And the man has wasted time and dirtied himself in the process. So don't lash out at nature, stay focused, stay there, go with the flow. If something unfortunate happens to you, accept it as nature has willed it and move with the flow. Uh, One of the biggest lessons, I think there's a book also about it by Ryan Holiday. I'm yet to read that. Is that every time you face an obstacle, that obstacle can lead you to another pathway. So what he calls it as, let what hinders shows you the way. What is your obstacle will be your future pathway. So this is a good lesson from this chapter. Uh, that's about it. People for people, be conscious of the people around you, and people exist for one another. You can instruct or endure them. You're here for a very short time, so don't get swayed by people's praises for you, because the ones who praised you also will be dead and gone. Not too late, not much later than you will be dead and gone. And all the followers of greatest kings also are dead and gone, so there's nobody to praise them on their own. So yeah, that's a good lesson to take, and that's a good place to end this chapter. I'll see you in book 9 soon. Bye bye.